So here's a situation I see constantly. An athlete has done the work, training is structured well, nutrition is solid, sleep is as good as it can reasonably be, and they're using supplements that actually make sense. And yet the recovery is still off. Energy still isn't where it should be. Performance is quietly plateaued without any good explanation. So this is the video for that athlete. Because at this point, general recommendations stop being useful. So you need to know specifically what's limiting your physiology. And that's exactly what targeted lab testing will tell you. Hey, I'm Dr. Jason Barker, naturopathic doctor, two-time Ironman finisher, lifelong endurance athlete, and 20 plus years working with endurance athletes. So let's walk through the 4 areas I evaluate clinically when recovery and performance aren't where they should be, and why each one matters more than most athletes realize. So the first area is hormones and stress response, and this is foundational. Your capacity to recover is directly tied to your hormonal environment. You can do everything else right, but if this system is dysregulated, recovery will be incomplete regardless. The key area to assess isn't total cortisol. It's the cortisol rhythm across the day, which requires a multi-point salivary test rather than a single blood draw. Cortisol is meant to follow a precise pattern, higher in the morning to drive alertness and energy, gradually tapering through the afternoon, and low enough by evening that your body can shift into repair mode overnight. When that rhythm breaks down under chronic training stress, you typically see one of 2 main patterns. Either cortisol stays elevated throughout the day, keeping the nervous system in a persistently activated state that blocks recovery, or the pattern flattens entirely, reflecting an HPA axis that's essentially exhausted its output capacity. Both impair recovery, but they require different interventions, which is exactly why we talked about this distinction in the overtraining video. Alongside cortisol, testosterone and DHEA are critical as well. These are your primary anabolic hormones, the ones driving tissue repair, muscular adaptation, and recovery between sessions. When they drop, which happens reliably under chronic training stress, muscle repair slows and performance follows a downward trajectory that's very hard to train your way out of. The second area is nutrient status, because you cannot recover without the right raw materials on board. So this is where a lot of athletes are quietly suboptimal even when their diet looks reasonable on paper. Training depletes nutrients faster than most people account for, and the gap between what the body needs for performance and what standard lab ranges flag as deficient is quite significant. Iron status, specifically ferritin, is one of the most important markers I look at, and as we covered in an earlier video, it's not part of a standard iron panel and it has to be ordered separately. It's important that you ask for that one. Without adequate iron stores, oxygen delivery is compromised, aerobic energy production becomes less efficient, and recovery slows down at a biochemical level. Magnesium and B vitamins are the other critical pieces. Magnesium, as you probably heard, is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions tied to energy production, muscle relaxation, and nervous system regulation. And it's significantly depleted through sweat under high training loads. B vitamins are central to mitochondrial energy metabolism, and as we discussed with B12 specifically, serum levels alone often don't tell the full story. Methylmalonic acid gives a much more accurate picture of functional B12 status. Now, the third area is oxidative stress and inflammation. So, of course, training generates oxidative stress. That's normal and expected, and it's part of the adaptation stimulus. We need a little bit of that going on. Markers like 8-HDG, which reflect oxidative damage to DNA, and lipid peroxidation markers give a direct window into whether the body is managing training load appropriately or being overwhelmed by it. Chronically elevated markers here explain a lot: persistent soreness that doesn't resolve, fatigue that doesn't respond to rest, and performance that keeps declining despite reduced training. It's not that the athlete is doing something wrong, it's that their system's capacity to buffer the stress of training has been exceeded and the numbers start to show it. The fourth area is gut health and intestinal permeability, and this is the most overlooked piece in endurance athletes by a significant margin. High training loads, particularly in the heat, increase gut permeability. The intestinal barrier, which is supposed to act as a selective filter, starts to break down under that stress. When that happens, lipopolysaccharide, or LPS, can pass through the gut wall into circulation. LPS is a potent driver of systemic inflammation. It triggers an immune response that increases inflammatory load across the entire body, directly impairing recovery, dampening immune function, and in some cases, meaningfully affecting performance. Markers like zonulin and anti-LPS antibody give direct insight into gut barrier integrity. So this is why endurance athletes with persistent fatigue, recurring illness, or GI symptoms during training often have a gut component to their recovery problem. even when they've never connected all of those dots, of course. These systems don't operate in isolation. Hormones regulate recovery. Nutrients support repair. The gut influences the inflammatory environment, and oxidative stress reflects the cumulative load on the whole system. When you look at all of them together, you're not just collecting numbers here, you're looking for very distinct patterns. And that pattern tells you specifically where the breakdown is occurring. That's what allows you to move from broad, general recommendations to a targeted, individualized strategy. So instead of asking, what should I try next, you can answer the questions that actually matter. Why am I not recovering? Why is my performance declining? Which system is the limiting factor right now? Once you know that, you can fix the right thing and progress starts to happen significantly faster. So to pull it all together, if you've addressed the fundamentals and you're still not where you should be, lab testing is the next logical step. The areas that matter most are cortisol rhythm and anabolic hormones, key nutrient status, especially ferritin, magnesium, and B12/MMA, oxidative stress and inflammatory markers, and gut barrier integrity through zonulin and anti-LPS antibody. This is how you stop guessing and start solving the actual problem. So this wraps up our 4-part recovery series. If you've watched all of it, you now have a complete framework for understanding why recovery breaks down and what to do about it at every level. Hit like and subscribe if this was helpful. I post science-backed content on performance and recovery regularly. And if you want individualized testing with performance-focused interpretation and a targeted protocol built around your results, visit naturalathleteclinic.com. I'm Dr. Jason Barker. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.